Carl Jung, with his unparalleled insight, warns us, what we do not face within ourselves ends up governing us, and we call it fate. But what if we could take the reins of this fate? What if, instead of fearing it, we could embrace it? The shadow, this hidden side of our psyche, carries parts of us that we have relegated to oblivion, hiding them in the shadows of our own being, not because they are unworthy, but because at some point we decided they were unacceptable. Fear, pain, unconfessed desires, all of these make up the shadow. And paradoxically, it is here that the key to our true freedom resides. In this brief yet intense journey of self-discovery, we will question what we call the self. We will allow ourselves to feel the discomfort of facing what we have avoided, and in doing so, open ourselves to a more authentic life. The journey we propose is challenging, but it is precisely on winding roads that we find the most revealing landscapes. Prepare yourself to enter this territory, where light and darkness are not opposites, but essential complements in the dance of who we truly are. Carl Gustav Jung, a figure who, in himself, defies the conventions of psychology, was born in Switzerland in 1875. From an early age, he exhibited a voracious curiosity, an innate need to understand not only the human mind, but the mysteries that reside within it. His gaze always went beyond the obvious, seeking what few dared to explore, hidden corners of the soul. Jung was not content to follow in the footsteps of his contemporary. Although he began his career under the influence of Sigmund Freud, he soon realized that the human psyche was more than a battleground between sexual instincts and social morality. For Jung, there was something deeper, something more vast, that could not be ignored. It was from this restlessness that he developed his own theories, diverging from Freud and creating a new path within psychology. He introduced concepts that were revolutionary at the time: the idea of the collective unconscious, archetypes, and of course the shadow. For Jung, the human mind was not just a set of individual experiences, but a tapestry woven with ancestral threads shared by all of humanity. He believed that to understand ourselves, we must dive into these deeper layers, where myths, symbols, and dreams intertwine, revealing truths that rationality cannot reach. Perhaps his greatest contribution was the idea that true personal fulfillment, he called individuation, can only be achieved when we integrate all aspects of our psyche, both the light and the darkness. Jung showed us that we are more than we appear to be. We are a universe in constant expansion, and the key to unlocking this universe lies in our ability to confront, accept, and integrate what is hidden in the shadows of our soul. With his intellectual and spiritual boldness, Jung not only transformed psychology, but also provided us with tools to understand and navigate the complexities of our own existence. He invites us to explore these depths, not as those who fear the unknown, but as those who know that in those depths lies the truth about who we truly are. Within each of us, there is an unlit region, a space we avoid looking at directly because there lie parts of ourselves that we would rather forget. Carl Jung called this region the shadow, a term that, at first glance, may seem dark, but actually carries a fascinating complexity. The shadow is not just a repository of our fears and weaknesses. It is, above all, a place where we store everything we have repressed throughout our lives. These are desires, impulses, and even talents that were set aside because at some point we judged they should not be seen in the light of day. Jung warns us that the shadow does not simply disappear because we decide to ignore it. On the contrary, it grows stronger and begins to influence our lives in subtle and often destructive ways. This influence manifests in our behaviors, in emotions that arise unexpectedly, and even in the projections we cast onto others. When we feel bothered by a trait in someone else, there is a strong chance that this discomfort is in fact a reflection of something we have repressed within ourselves. The shadow is not just a burden, it is also a portal to wholeness. Jung invites us to face the shadow not as an enemy, but as an integral part of who we are. Within this darkness, we find a wealth of unexplored potential. What we repress, no matter how painful or uncomfortable, is also what can make us more whole, more authentic. Facing the shadow requires courage. It is a process that challenges us to confront aspects of ourselves that we prefer to avoid, but when recognized and integrated, they lead us to a state of greater internal harmony. Jung believed that true healing, true inner peace, is only possible when we reconcile with all aspects of our psyche, including those that dwell in the shadow. And so, instead of fearing this part of ourselves, we should approach it with curiosity, with an open mind, ready to discover what it has to teach us. The shadow, in its essence, is not something to be defeated, but rather something to be embraced. It is through this embrace that we can finally free ourselves from the chains of the unconscious and move toward a more complete and true life. Confronting the shadow is not just a choice. It is a necessity for anyone who wishes to live authentically. When we avoid this part of ourselves, we create an internal division that prevents us from accessing our wholeness. Carl Jung understood that the price of ignoring the shadow was high. He observed that what remains unrecognized and unintegrated within us does not simply disappear. On the contrary, it continues to influence our lives, shaping our actions, our thoughts, and even our destinies in insidious ways. Imagine for a moment living with a stranger inside you, someone who knows your deepest fears, your most unconfessed desires, and who, in silence, manipulates your steps. That stranger is the shadow. It does not just seek our attention. It cries out for recognition. Every time we act impulsively, every time we react with an intensity that surprises us, it is the shadow manifesting, trying to show us what we are denying. Integrating the shadow is therefore an act of courage, but also an act of self-love. It is not about eliminating these parts of ourselves, but recognizing and embracing them as legitimate aspects of who we are. The shadow carries elements that, although painful or uncomfortable, are essential to our wholeness. By integrating them, we not only free ourselves from the burden of the unknown, but also reclaim potentials that have been dormant. This process of integration offers us the chance to live more coherently, without the masks we use to hide our imperfections. And as we become more whole, we also become more capable of forming genuine connections with others. The authenticity that emerges from this integration is palpable, making us not only more true to ourselves, but also more open and understanding in our relationships. Facing the shadow is an invitation to freedom. The freedom to be who we truly are without the fears that limit us. It is indeed a challenging path, filled with unsettling revelations, but it is also a path that leads to a more meaningful life. By reconciling with the shadow, we find an inner balance that transcends dualities, allowing our light to shine with greater intensity and truth. When we allow ourselves to explore what is hidden within us, something extraordinary begins to happen. The integration of the shadow, this intimate and transformative process, brings with it benefits that transcend a superficial understanding of life. By confronting what we have avoided and embracing the parts of ourselves that have been relegated to oblivion, we start to experience a profound and genuine shift in our being. One of the first signs of this transformation is an increase in self-awareness. We begin to truly know ourselves, to see our deepest motives, and to understand the roots of our behaviors. What was once a mystery, force pushing us in directions we did not understand, now becomes clear. This clarity not only frees us from self-destructive patterns, but also allows us to make decisions that are more aligned with who we truly are. Life, then, begins to be lived with more intention, more purpose. The benefits extend beyond ourselves. Our relationships, often strained by projections and internal conflicts, begin to flourish. By integrating the shadow, we develop greater empathy and a deeper understanding of others. We start to see in others' imperfections a reflection of our own struggles, and with this, we become more tolerant, more compassionate. The connections we establish become more authentic, richer in meaning. Emotional resilience is another gift we receive by integrating the shadow. By confronting our fears and facing what causes us pain, we become stronger and more capable of handling adversity. The emotional storms that once devastated us are now faced with a serenity that once seemed unattainable. It's not that we stop feeling, but we learn to navigate these feelings with more confidence, with the certainty that we are capable of enduring and growing through them. This is the promise of the shadow, that by embracing it, we find not only healing but also freedom. A freedom that allows us to live with more authenticity, more courage, and a renewed sense of who we truly are. And it is in this authenticity that the true beauty of being human resides. Working with the shadow is like embarking on a journey into the unknown, passage through the most intimate and hidden parts of our psyche. This process, though challenging, is profoundly liberating. It begins with a simple but crucial step: self-reflection. This is where we allow ourselves to look inward, unafraid of what we might find. We ask ourselves what truly bothers us, what we avoid admitting even to ourselves. It is a moment of raw honesty, where we let the masks fall and face what is. As we move forward, we dive into the exploration of these repressed parts. This dive can be taken in various ways: through meditation, where we silence the mind and allow forgotten thoughts to surface; through journaling, writing down feelings and thoughts without censorship; or through psychotherapy, where an experienced guide helps us untangle the tightest knots of our psyche. Each method offers a window to see what has been hidden, revealing the roots of our fears, anger, and desires. But exploration alone is not enough. The next step, and perhaps the most challenging, is acceptance. Here, we do not judge what we find. Instead, we recognize these parts as integral to who we are. We accept that we are made of both light and shadow, and that both are essential to our wholeness. This is the moment of embracing, where we welcome what we have always feared, acknowledging the value these repressed parts have in our growth. Finally, we reach the stage of integration. This is the point where the inner work begins to reflect in our external lives. Integrating the shadow means finding ways to express and incorporate these previously rejected parts into our daily lives. This could mean changes in behavior, adopting new perspectives, or opening up to new interests that were once ignored. Integration does not happen all at once. It is a continuous process that requires patience and dedication. Each small change, each new understanding, is a step toward a more whole and authentic life. Working with the shadow is not an easy path, but it is a path that leads to true freedom. Freedom to be who we truly are, without the chains of fear or denial. It is a journey of self-discovery that, although sometimes painful, carries the promise of a life lived with more fullness and truth. It is an invitation to become complete, accepting all that we are, and finally finding peace in the complexity of our own nature. The idea of confronting the shadow is not limited to Jungian psychology. It resonates deeply with various philosophical currents that explore the mysteries of human existence. Friedrich Nietzsche, for instance, provokes us to stare directly into the abyss we carry within. He warns that when battling our inner monsters, we must be careful not to become them ourselves. This is a powerful admonition. In facing what is darkest within us, there is a risk of losing ourselves in this confrontation, allowing the shadow side to take over our identity. Nietzsche invites us to recognize that the shadow should not be denied or destroyed, understood and assimilated. He suggests that by integrating our internal complexities, we reach a form of transcendence, a state of being that goes beyond conventional moral limitation. For him, it is in this encounter between light and darkness that we discover what we truly are, not just rational beings, but also intensely contradictory creatures, filled with desires, fears, and aspirations. Søren Kierkegaard, the pioneer of existentialism, leads us to an even more personal reflection. He speaks of the necessity of confronting the true self, the one that lives behind the masks imposed by social norms. For Kierkegaard, authentic existence is only achieved when we embrace everything we are, even the parts that make us shudder. He proposes a journey of continuous introspection, where we are called to question our values, investigate our deepest beliefs, and align more profoundly with our genuine nature. In this sense, the shadow is not an enemy, but a path to the freedom of being. Eastern philosophies, such as Taoism and Buddhism, also touch upon this issue in a subtle and revealing way. Taoism, with its concept of yin and yang, suggests that harmony arises from the acceptance of opposite. The dark and the light, the strong and the soft, coexist in an eternal dance. Similarly, the shadow is seen as part of the totality of life. It is not something to be rejected but harmonized. In Buddhism, the middle way teaches us to avoid the extremes of denial or indulgence. It is about a delicate balance between facing what we are and not being consumed by it. These philosophical reflections offer not only a deeper understanding of the shadow, but also a vision of how we can engage more fully with our own existence. They challenge us to embrace the totality of our being and to venture into the complexity of our souls, where true freedom resides. The shadow, after all, is an invitation to discovery, not just of what we are, but of what we can become. As we dive deeper into exploring the recesses of the mind and heart, we begin to understand that the journey of facing our shadow is, in fact, the journey of becoming whole. Carl Jung, in guiding us through this path, did not offer easy answers. He challenged us to confront what we avoid, face the parts of ourselves that remain in the dark. For it is there, in the tension between what we are and what we pretend not to be, that the key to true personal fulfillment lies. There are no shortcuts on this path. The road to authenticity is long, winding, and often painful. It involves looking inward, seeing what is hidden in the shadowy corners of the soul, and having the courage not to look away. It is an invitation to abandon illusions of perfection and embrace the inherent chaos of being human. When we integrate these aspects, we discover that peace does not come from an imposed order, but from a radical acceptance of our own complexity. This acceptance, this reconciliation with the totality of who we are, opens doors to a richer and more meaningful life. A life where every action, every choice, is made not based on an ideal of how we should be, but on who we truly are. The burdens we carry, the masks we wear, become unnecessary. We begin to live more lightly, more present, aware that the shadow is not our enemy, but rather an ally in the search for the truth of our existence. Personal fulfillment, in this context, is not a destination, but a state of constant evolution. It is about the continuous movement of delving deeper into oneself, embracing the discomfort of discovery, and finding strength in vulnerability. And it is in this process that we find a freedom that cannot be bought. Freedom that comes from being true to oneself, in all one's fullness and imperfection. Therefore, at the end of this video, I leave an invitation. Let each of us dare to make this inner journey. Let us look at our shadows, not with fear but with curiosity. Let us have the courage to question, to confront, to integrate. For in doing so, we not only become more truthful, but also more human, more alive. This is the path, personal fulfillment, a path where, instead of losing ourselves in what is expected, we find the courage to be who we truly are. If you felt the impact of this journey and want to dive even deeper into the exploration of the mind, the soul, and the mysteries that dwell within us, subscribe to the channel now and activate the notification bell. This way, you won't miss our upcoming videos, which will continue to uncover the secrets of Jungian psychology, deep philosophical reflections, and guides for transformative self-knowledge. Leave your comments with your own reflections and share this video with those who need to hear these words. Together, we can build a space of genuine pursuit of authenticity and inner freedom.